All right, I'm going to get things started. As a few more folks file in, a warm welcome to everyone joining us this morning. If you're in the US, afternoon for the folks in Europe. We're going into another examination of carbon footprinting. And if you attend How Good webinars at all, you know this is a topic we're super familiar with. But this time we're going to do it through the lens of the science, the strategy, and the bottom line payoff. And we're going to also do it from the perspective of both How Good and the Carbon Trust, and how we've come together and how our partnership has contemplated these themes. So I'll just jump right into the agenda for today. Quick refresher on product carbon footprint. What is it? How is a product carbon footprint built? What are some of the hurdles to creating product carbon footprints? And we'll take a look at that in our platform Lattis. So look forward to that. But then also, what are some of the benefits and the ROI to creating product carbon footprints? And I think this is why a lot of you are here. You guys know that your opportunities multiply when you're measuring emissions at the product level. And on the flip side of that, there are missed opportunities when you are not. So we'll look at both sides of that coin. And then the Carbon Trust team will take us through the very critical role of assurance in carbon footprinting, and why they become such a big time partner for us at How Good over the last year. And then importantly, the what next, right? Kind of a step by step of minimizing the hurdles, maximizing the benefits, gaining assurance as quickly and as cost effectively as possible, and then weaving that into business strategy. So we'll make sure to finish there and then do some Q&A towards the end. Leading today's webinar, we've got Crystal Granger, Director of Growth and Innovation at HowGood. You've got me there in the middle. I'm Head of Partnerships at HowGood, and I work closely with Tiffany Aries down at the bottom, Associate Director at the Carbon Trust. And to start with that product carbon footprint refresher, I want to turn it over to Crystal and have us walk her through that.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. Great to have you here today. As Michael mentioned, I'm Crystal. I'm the Director of Growth and Innovation here at HowGood. Before I dive into the ins and outs of product carbon footprinting, I want to take a few moments to actually introduce you to HowGood and the role that we play in the food industry. At our core, HowGood is a sustainability intelligence company. From day one, we've been focused on the food industry because, frankly, we believe that's where the large part of the world's carbon emissions come from, as well as the area with the most potential for reduction. HowGood has been mapping the global food supply system for over 18 years to understand the impact of food and agriculture across things like carbon, nature, and human rights. Our team of agricultural experts, carbon specialists, and food system analysts are processing data on an ongoing iterative basis, which feeds into our AI-powered database for automated product footprinting. That database is the largest in the world, with over 90,000 crop and location-specific emissions alone. As a result, and due in large part to the amazing partnerships that we've cultivated, we've generated nearly 4 million product carbon footprints across the food industry and for our customers. Product carbon footprinting is what we do at HowGood, whether that's for climate labeling, rolled up into your corporate emissions reporting, sent out to your customers as part of a request, or used for internal carbon reduction and planning. HowGood has been working with our customers to calculate carbon footprints for the entire global food industry, one single ingredient at a time. And because we understand how interconnected the food industry is, we've committed ourselves to partnering with key players all across the value chain, from ingredient suppliers to solution providers, CPGs to retailers, and also food distributors and restaurants all across the Americas, Asia, and Europe. Over the next hour, I'll be taking us on a journey about use cases and the return of investment of product carbon footprinting, as well as discussing with the Carbon Trust some opportunities for assurances that we can unlock for you. However, to make sure that everyone's on the same page, let's actually start by talking about what I mean when I talk about product carbon footprinting and how it's calculated. The purpose of a product carbon footprint, for PCF is to calculate the overall carbon footprint of a product. We think of that as a dynamic carbon LCA. When done correctly, PCFs allow companies to systematically assess all of their products using the same system boundaries and the same methodologies. It creates a like-for-like comparison between any two products and at a more granular level, any two ingredients. ISO 14067 and the GHG Worldwide Protocol are both industry gold standards for measuring PCFs, recommending specific metrics for measurement at every stage of a product's life cycle, from the moment the crop was grown to manufacturing, packaging, and beyond. What you're seeing on the screen in front of you is the value and percentage of emissions at each stage. These sum of values is the carbon footprint, but it's also incredibly useful to actually look at the breakouts at each stage and in order to determine how to best set your reduction goals. Keep in mind that every one of these values differs based on countless factors, all of which are important to include in the overall product carbon footprint. These are criteria like which crops were used to produce the ingredients, where were those crops grown, and what sorts of inputs or practices were used in the growing of said crops. Without accurate representations at each stage of a product's life cycle, your carbon footprint might be off. PCFs have been treated like LCAs for some time now. As a sustainability consultant myself in a previous life, I would have my customers pay me to conduct a lengthy and expensive life cycle analysis to determine each one of their products' distinct footprint. With the direction the industry has moved more recently and the rate of acceleration we're seeing, this outdated approach is unscalable. When done at scale, however, and in an automated way while still maintaining the level of granularity necessary, the power of a PCF is pretty darn incredible. So let's take a look at PCFs while also talking about Scope 3 emissions, because as we know, it's nearly impossible to separate the two. As some of us might be familiar with, Scope 3 is a company's indirect emissions, primarily coming from your supply chain. For a food company, these are the emissions that you purchase as part of your ingredients or your products. For a very long time, the industry standard and accepted recommendation was to calculate your Scope 3 emissions by simply asking your suppliers for their overall corporate footprint, then dividing those emissions evenly across every product that you purchased from that supplier. Quite often what we saw is that it would only be made up of that supplier's Scope 1 and 2 data, missing a massive portion of emissions coming from their own upstream activities. Basically, this meant that the majority of agricultural emissions weren't being accounted for. And as we've leaned further into reduction-oriented strategy, this process is no longer useful, nor, frankly, did that process produce a particularly accurate result in the first place. For example, what if the ingredients that you purchased from your supplier were their lowest impact ingredients? Historically, averages didn't account for good sourcing decisions made by your team. Similarly, what if you wanted to pinpoint areas to make a reduction impact? You would have had to and have no way of easily identifying those hotspots within your supply chain. Bridging the gap between product carbon footprinting and Scope 3 emissions creates actionable carbon accounting. So let's move into the how. When done at scale, across an entire portfolio, for example, PCFs can be used for a number of purposes, servicing both internal sustainability strategy as well as external reporting requirements. We all know that bold commitments are being made across the industry to reduce Scope 3 emissions. Diageo and General Mills, for example, are pledging to reduce their emissions by 50% by the year 2030. HowGood customers like Orkla and Nestle both have commitments by 2025. And we're all familiar with Walmart's commitment to 1 billion tons of carbon reduced by 2030. This cannot be done without the insight into the carbon footprint of every single product. But with that footprint comes opportunities. like giving your product innovation teams the ability to understand which ingredients have a lower carbon impact before those products even come to market. Similarly, it gives your procurement teams the ability to find and partner with the right supplier in order to co-own wins. Countless other levers can be pulled in order to continue to chip away at your carbon reduction goals. And of course, those goals will be far more achievable if you set them with intention and good data. So, at the end of the day, that footprinting, when used internally, is primarily in service of driving carbon reduction. But the internal use case is not the only one. And ultimately, your internal use case becomes your external strategy. Carbon calculations have become the shared language of the food industry. HowGood recently hosted a webinar with one of our customers, Carry Ingredients, who spoke at length about the strategy to differentiate themselves based on their product sustainability and data transparency. We both recognize that a transparent, sustainable global food supply chain is not only the right thing to do for the planet, it's a smart business strategy. By focusing on things like transparency, communication, and shared responsibility, you can essentially foster a stronger relationship with your partners, which is exactly what Carrie did. In addition to customer reporting, a company's PCFs are also essential to generating an accurate Scope 3 emission. For things like regulatory compliance and voluntary disclosure based on what we just spoke about. Lastly, product carbon footprinting is essential for doing any kind of public-facing carbon claims. We're going to dive into this in a few more minutes here and more deeply with the Carbon Trust team. So we're not just talking about the efficacy of carbon labeling, we're also talking about the critical importance of verification in transparent, consumer-facing communications. Until then, while PCFs are essential for designing an effective sustainability strategy, meeting regulatory requirements, and keeping your customers happy, it's generally believed that they're not easy to do. 75% of a sustainability team's time is traditionally spent simply just gathering and analyzing data. So there's a limited amount of opportunity left to take action. They're stuck in the tactical and missing out on the strategy. I, in my role at HowGood, have conversations with sustainability thinkers and doers every single day. And I wanted to share with this group some of the stuff that I hear. About cost, one customer told me that in order to get an accurate product carbon footprint, they were going to need data from all of their suppliers. Launching supplier engagement at scale would have been impossible for their team to take on alone. From another leader in sustainability, I was told that their traditional method for gathering and generating footprints when they needed them to come with assurance was to commission an LCA. That was the format they were used to, but it is extremely difficult to justify that cost expenditure at scale. With footprinting taking as many resources as it does, another customer told me that they simply felt lost on what to do when launching their new region ag pilot or switching to a more sustainable supplier. They wanted their PCFs to reflect their new efforts, but they didn't know how. And then lastly, another HowGood customer shared with me that they felt there was so much regulation regarding the consumer-facing labeling, they weren't even sure that it was worth the upside to take the risk, which is absolutely heartbreaking because they deserved to be rewarded for their efforts. They knew that that would help them sell more products, but without proper assurance, they didn't know if they should do it. Now, I'll be coming back on how to solve for some of these challenges more technically later in the webinar. But for now, I actually want to turn over the mic to the Carbon Trust team to talk more about what we collectively see as one of the biggest barriers, which is a hesitation and fear related to assurances. Tiffany, would you kindly start to speak about how your team is supporting the industry with assurances to power PCF communications?
Yeah, thank you so much, Crystal, and thanks for the introduction. So for any of those that might not know us, so the Carbon Trust are a mission-driven organisation, and on a mission to accelerate the move to a decarbonised future. We've been very active in the carbon and assurance space over the last 20 years, and supporting clients to do this and to credibly communicate the action they're taking and the accomplishments as well that they've made and the progress they've made over that time. In terms of kind of the experience we have in this space, so we are an independent organisation, and having done assurance across a multitude of sectors, including the food and drink sector, we've been supporting clients to verify footprints for a very long time. This also led to us developing one of the first product carbon footprint labels, which was consumer facing back in 2007, and which has been a really critical tool in bringing transparency and bringing information to end consumers on the impact and also the progress of the progress that brands were making, and that products and how products were contributing to reducing emissions. Over that time, we have labelled products that feature around the world, so across 40 different geographies, and kind of verified over 37,000 individual different product carbon footprints. As part of our assurance work, so we don't just do verification of specific product carbon footprints, we also do support other partners such as HowGood that we're speaking with today, in order to support essentially this concept of having footprinting done at scale. And so when we're doing this kind of assurance work, we're really looking to verify that essentially a tool or a model is able to generate product carbon footprints at scale, in a credible way aligned with international standards. And that's exactly what we've done with HowGood here. So taking kind of a three sort of tiered approach to how we've reviewed the platform that you'll hear more and see more of in a minute. We've reviewed from a governance perspective the alignment with international standards and how these are kind of updated and maintained. From a functionality perspective, it includes a kind of a review of accuracy of results, but also calculations and emission factors that are used. So the sort of what we would call the back end, but also looking at the user interface and the user experience. And this is really to assess what the risk level is in terms of uncertainty and ability for there to be human errors made as a part of this process. So throughout this process, which we completed with HowGood, we've been kind of doing with HowGood over the last over a year now. We have come to a point where we verified the HowGood's methodology and platform and tool, and essentially what this means for you if you're calculating footprints through the HowGood platform is that you are able to benefit from some of the benefits of calculating a footprint within a verified tool. So this results in more cost efficient product level assurance because the process has already in a sense been started. So we would only be looking at product specific elements and data inputs rather than checking that specific methodologies or assumptions have been followed correctly, because that's already been reviewed as a part of the overall model assurance process. This of course means that assurance can be achieved in a much more accelerated timeframe than if you had built your own tool, where we would have to review everything from scratch, and also allows you to access product level claims and potentially the use of labels that you can then use to communicate both on a B2B and on a B2C basis. So talking a little bit more about the importance of third-party assurance. So I think from our perspective, and Crystal mentioned this earlier, there has been such an increase and change in the regulatory landscape, but also in kind of consumer behavior and ask for transparency. But this also has bled into other parts of the sector as well. So we definitely see an increase in need for third-party verified numbers from the retail sector of the food sector, and also for brands that are procuring ingredients who then want to be able to make downstream claims about their products. So really having third-party assurance ensures that you can, first of all, provide this information with confidence, and knowing that it is credible, aligned with international standards, can feed into claims that your customers will be able to kind of utilize in a useful way, but also that will be understood later down the chain and finally at the end consumer point. It is definitely something that we see our clients telling us is kind of a competitive advantage. So being able to demonstrate real progress against your own plans, your own reduction strategies and reduction targets for your products or your product ranges, or moving to lower carbon product ranges, for example, which is obviously a really powerful tool. From a labeling perspective, I think besides changing regulation and different legislation coming in and guidelines around making green claims around the world, there definitely has been over the last years an increase in public engagement and scrutiny also of these claims, which again highlights the importance of having assurance in the first place. We've seen an increase in demand as well for transparency from consumers. Most of our labeling is destined for consumers, and this our different kind of labeling claims are really looking to give information to the end consumer, and also transparently share further information about the products that they're buying, so they can make informed choices. But always statistics and numbers speak volumes, I think. So from a consumer perception of product labeling, we have seen that there is a huge trend towards wanting to have more information about products, wanting labels that they recognize and they understand, having availability of additional information on product claims that are being made. And that they would feel more positive about brands that are using labels on their products. Of course, in the context of the evolving kind of regulatory landscape, own labels, I think, are definitely going to become more and more risky to use and less trusted. So ensuring that you have a trusted and verified mark is going to be really important if you're looking to label or to continue labeling products. And then finally, so looking at different how different platforms have also leveraged both consumer demand, but also brands making efforts to reduce their product carbon footprints. We have a number of claims and clients that are using the product carbon footprint Carbon Trust claims on products on Amazon, on their Climate Pledge Friendly scheme, and based on kind of testing that Amazon has been doing, you can see there that there is a 10% increase in product page views for those products that are listed on the Climate Pledge Friendly portion of the site. And this testing was done for like products, and they did also see an increase in sales compared to, again, a like-for-like product. So it just does reinforce the message that having that third-party verification of both the numbers and claims that you might be looking to make really is powerful, and can be used as a force for driving change and making the investment case for reducing product carbon footprints further, but also for shifting consumer demands towards the products of the future that you might be looking to reinforce. So that's it from me for now. So I'm going to pass back to Crystal, who is now going to take us through Lattis a little bit more.
Thanks, Tiffany. And just to add before that, I think that when we summarize the information that you shared, the demand is up, whether that's from a supply chain customer or consumers like ourselves. But confidence hasn't really changed. It has not matched that demand pace. So I think it's really clever that we perpetuate this message of carbon calculations being this common language. We know the demands is going to continue to go up, but we have to make sure that the confidence and by proxy, the assurance that the Carbon Trust provides is there to match it. So a long-winded way of saying we're very thankful here at HowGood, as well as all the customers that we have amazing partners like you to help us with that assurance and that confidence. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about, we looked at the role and benefits of assurance that Tiffany provided. Let's practically build a PCF. I want to take a look and walk us through HowGood's platform, Lattis. That is the platform that we offer for product carbon footprinting and corporate carbon accounting, mostly because that is the tangible how to actually do this as an end user. So let me go ahead and go to my instance of Lattis. Bear with me just a moment here. Okay, so in addition to being the world's largest sustainability database, Lattis is a user-friendly platform that also helps centralize all of your sustainability data. After logging into Lattis, on the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll notice a typical navigation bar. For today's presentation, we're going to take a look at the products page. The products page is essentially where you manage all of your finished products. And each finished product is nested under its own dedicated workspace. I've built mine according to sales categories like granola bites. So if I click on my granola bites workspace, here's where all of the sustainability information lives for my granola products that I currently sell. If I click into my organic granola bar, I'm able to drill down to the sustainability data at an individual product level. I'll click on edit formulas and I'll see formula details like the ingredient list, sourcing location, any certifications or standards, vendor information, and ingredient inclusion percentage. So what you're seeing right now is an example of a completed product in Lattis. From here, I can quickly create my carbon footprint report. I'll open my report toolkit, I'll download the report, and now what you'll see is a product carbon footprint report that references methodology being certified by the Carbon Trust. I also have details for the entire life cycle of this product and source material for all of HowGood's product carbon footprint methodology, including things like system boundaries. And then once I have this information, this report can be used to engage with my internal stakeholders about the impact of my products. I can share it with my downstream customers as a response to sustainability data requests, which we just talked about, or I can actually just offer it proactively and in order to use the sustainability impact of my products as a competitive advantage. So now let's understand how we actually create a PCF using Lattis from the ground up. We'll take a couple steps back and understand how to build it. Let's say, for example, I have a new organic granola bar I'm bringing to market that uses organic honey instead of cane sugar. In the HowGood Lattis platform, I'll create a new product, I'll nest it under my granola workspace, and then I'll name it. So let's name this organic honey granola bar. Then I'll start to add my ingredients using the HowGood database. I'll add my oats, I'll add my butter, and then I'm going to add that new organic honey here shortly. Lastly, I'm going to want to change the standards for all of my ingredients because they're all organic. So I'll go down to adding certified organic here, which will apply to my formula in total. Now you can see that there are still a couple pieces of information missing, like manufacturing type and manufacturing region in order to get that carbon footprint. I'll go to my other details. For sake of demonstration, I'll make a snack, and then I'm going to say my manufacturing region is the USA. And then once I've added that information and updated the missing fields, boom, I've got a carbon footprint that is now complete, and I'm ready to download and share this PCF with my internal stakeholders and my downstream customers. One thing to add, once I actually save my new formula, I'll notice a few more sustainability metrics in the platform, things like biodiversity impact, blue water usage, in addition to the carbon impact of my granola. So just like before, from here, you'll select Create Report, and then you'll download it. And then in less than literally 4.5 minutes, because I've timed myself, I have a product carbon footprint that I can share internally as well as externally. Okay, well, that wraps up the demonstration portion of the webinar. I am going to pass it back to Michael and talk about how you get started.
Before I talk about the pilot that we're setting up, maybe just a little bit of history on the HowGood and the Carbon Trust and how we kind of got this partnership started in the journey over the last year. HowGood achieved model certification around spring of 2024, which was a long process, and it's unique to HowGood, especially for food products, and allows us to offer this product level assurance really at a fraction of the time, fraction of the cost when you're building those product carbon footprints in Lattis, as Crystal just showed us. And so it's really that methodology and governance in Lattice that was included in the baseline verification that Carbon Trust did last year that's kind of led us to this point. You fast forward to this fall, we created a combined offering that we're now prepared to sort of roll out and test with this first cohort of companies that want to move particularly quickly. And so we'll build this initial cohort really as soon as we jump off this webinar and then get started in early 2025. We actually got started already with some interest in the days leading up to the webinar. And so we'll be rounding out the cohort in the coming days. And of course, rolling it out more broadly later in the year so that everyone can participate in what we're building between the Carbon Trust and HowGood, which is super exciting. As head of partnerships, I'm very excited about it. But maybe to get more precise, here's a step-by-step of how it'll flow. And first, it's pretty apparent we need users in Lattice. Some of you already meet that requirement. Others can become users in Lattice and sign up for that. And then you also have an agreement with Carbon Trust for the assurance piece. And then we'll move straight into identifying the products that require assurance. And this can range greatly by context and need. Sometimes it's a select group or a category. Other times it's an entire portfolio of products. We'll build those product carbon footprints in Lattice, and then we'll submit the footprints and supporting evidence, things like primary data, to the Carbon Trust, and their team's going to review it. And they will verify the product carbon footprints based upon what's effectively a pass-fail system. If the product passes verification, you see down at the bottom, then the Carbon Trust label, which you saw in the report that Crystal downloaded, and accompanying claim will be available for use. And I think this is where I probably turn it to you, Tiffany, maybe just to add some detail on claim eligibility.
Yes, thanks, Michael. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we are really passionate about allowing and facilitating brands to communicate about the improvements and the progress they've made on products and to end consumers, so that consumers can make more conscious choices when they're buying products. And so we do have a number of claims that we can verify for customers. And these range from commitments to emissions reductions, achievement of emissions reductions, and as well as comparative claims against other products, against market averages, and the like. So we do have specific requirements for each of the claims. And for example, to give a really simple example, so to be eligible for the achieved reduction claim, you would need to be able to demonstrate that your product has reduced its emissions. So looking at a baseline and a subsequent year, for example. But all of our requirements are publicly available on the Carbon Trust website, so we're completely transparent on requirements regarding labels. But would be happy to answer any questions if there are any more in the Q&A portion of this webinar.
Yeah, perfect. That's actually a great segue. move to Q&A. And for that, we're actually going to add a couple of in-house experts. We have Liz Aspley. You see her in the middle, metrics architect from HowGood. And then we also have Kieran Trivedi, carbon footprint consultant from the Carbon Trust. So we will go into that. And I see a good first question to jump into. Does Lattis account for soil organic carbon removals? Thank you, Arlene, for submitting that. Liz, I'm going to turn it over to you to answer that one.
Yes, it does. You have to meet the requirements that are in the draft land sector and removals guidance, and pending the final guidance that we're expecting next year, any adjustments that are made there.
Awesome. All right. How can the broader community using product carbon footprints better understand what is meant by uncertainty and how additional and or improved data sources reduce that? Thank you, Christoph, for submitting that. Carbon Trust team, I think you guys could address this one. Maybe Kieran, you could lead off.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Hi, everyone. So I think when we talk about uncertainty, I think the way that you can help people understand better is by being quite transparent and open about what is the data quality that you have. So with any kind of product carbon footprint, there's going to be a product emissions report or kind of methodology document that comes along with that, and through your communications and through the Lattis application as well. There's ratings for data quality for all of the back-end data that Lattis have provided, but also you will have to rate the data that you're putting in. So you'll have a clear picture from using the tool and having that verified footprint of what the data quality and uncertainty kind of boundaries are. And I think it's something that probably people can talk more about and show the benefits of as your footprint becomes more specific over time and increases in accuracy.
Awesome. Thanks, Kieran. I see another one that I can probably address, Crystal, you might be able to layer on, but when you calculate a product carbon footprint in Lattice, will the tool be able to provide the individual contribution ingredient level of carbon emissions adding up to the total product carbon footprint? I think the simple answer to that is yes. I think you saw a little bit of that in Crystal's demo, but certainly looking at ingredient by ingredient, kind of the building blocks from the bottom up to amount to a total product carbon footprint. I think that's a key part of what we're doing in Lattice. But Crystal, I'll turn it over to you for anything you want to add.
I think that was perfect, Michael. Just to reiterate, when we began here at HowGood, we approached it from the ingredient level, referencing back to the idea that our database has over 90,000 crop and location emission factors alone. That was our approach, was to start at the crop and location level so that you didn't have to do the legwork to roll up those emission factors into a finished good. Plus, also keep in mind that all of our customers are in different positions within the supply chain. So some of our customers are raw commodities or ingredient suppliers, and some of them, build a granola bar. So we wanted to make sure that we were taking an approach that was appropriate for everyone.
All right, thanks, Crystal. What is the difference between Carbon Trust certified and Climate Pledge friendly scheme? This one I'll turn over to the Carbon Trust team.
Yes. So if you have ever been on the Amazon website, so essentially Amazon have a portion of their website called the Climate Pledge Friendly Scheme, in which they list products that have achieved different verification standards. So organic, for example, is a standard that is recognized on the Amazon Climate Pledge Friendly Scheme. So Amazon have essentially reviewed a long list of verifications and certifications, and then have decided based on their own carbon kind of policy and program to select the assurance standards that they are going to accept and recognize as a way of promoting products that are making contributions to reducing carbon, for example, there's, if you look on the website, there's like a number of other schemes that are also eligible. Some are to do with reducing waste, some are carbon related, some are water related. There's different metrics that those cover. So the Amazon Climate Pledge Friendly Scheme, it's really a platform for promoting different types of assurance claims. Whereas at the Carbon Trust, so we really have, as the name suggests, we really have a focus on carbon, and we essentially verify companies and products against specific standards to allow you to then make claims. Some of which are eligible to be used on Amazon, but we also are partnered with other platform providers as well that sell products like Amazon, that also kind of recognize Carbon Trust labels as well. And yeah, happy to share more about those if that's useful.
Great. Thanks, Tiffany. This one says, I've heard of PACT, verified by WBCSD. How does the methodology differ to the one written by PACT and WBCSD? And maybe Liz, I'll first turn that one over to you.
Yes. So PACT is not really a methodology for calculating product carbon footprints, but more in terms of requirements for how they're shared among various partners. We have been able to share things impact format with some of our partners, but those are the major differences.
Okay. And then can the emissions factors be adjusted based upon supplier-specific LCA emissions factors? Crystal, I think you might be best to answer this one.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and the short answer is absolutely. So we definitely have various ways of collecting data, quality controlling that data to make sure that it aligns with our own methodology, which is then, therefore and by proxy certified, accredited, and substantiated. But yeah, most customers don't get to that step in their journey, which is engaging with their suppliers until they've gotten a really solid baseline to begin with. But that is definitely what we recommend as like a next step or stop in the generation of data maturity, which is to then engage with your suppliers. We also encourage beyond that to go a little bit further, to engage your suppliers, to enable and educate them on why you're asking for this information, and then to get as far back in data granularity as you possibly can, which is all the way at the farm level, which obviously HowGood supports. Good question.
Great. Thanks, Crystal. And we knew we would get this one. What does it cost to get a PCF model certified? Carbon Trust team. Tiffany, maybe weigh in on this one.
Yes. So unfortunately, it's probably not going to be a very helpful answer, but it really depends on the scope and the boundary of what the model is doing. So if it's a model that's, looking at one product range, it will obviously be more straightforward than if you're building a model that is looking at multiple product ranges, or even if you're covering multiple sectors. So it is pretty bespoke and tailored based on what you're kind of covering as a part of that. So I can't give you a specific number, unfortunately, but yeah, it is priced kind of on a case by case basis.
All right. Thank you, Tiffany. This one says, what is the relationship between Lattis and GHGP? Is it simply a platform built to model and accelerate application of that framework? And then how do you monitor progress and alignment with those things? Liz, maybe you weigh in on this one.
So the relationship between GHG protocol and Lattis is that we follow the GHG protocol product standard for our product carbon footprints. It is one of these standards that our model was certified against. GHG protocol really tells you how to measure carbon, or it's one of the bodies that can really tell you how to measure carbon. And then our platform Lattis does the calculations according to those requirements.
All right, great. Thanks, Liz. Will each new product carbon footprint performed by HowGood with Lattis automatically receive Carbon Trust and Climate Friendly Pledge? Or will each PCF need to go through their own validation and verification? I'll start there, and then Carbon Trust team, you feel free to weigh in. But I think each new PCF performed by HowGood, built in Lattis, is kind of, call it, 80% there or some significant percentage there because of the work that went into that model and platform verification. And then the extra mile or the extra step to get to completion towards that Carbon Trust verification is engaging directly with that team to kind of complete that. Again, we're cutting a lot of the time and cost out of it by building that product carbon footprint in Lattice and then completing those final steps with the Carbon Trust team in order to get to that that validation and verification. And Tiffany, feel free to kind of layer on from there.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So there will be additional things that will need to be checked. Because kind of as I mentioned at the beginning and as Michael's correctly said, we've done a lot of the upfront work, but there are still product specific things that need to be checked. And as part of any credible assurance process, evidence behind data that's being input also needs to be checked. As well as in some cases, interviews and site visit requirements and things like that, which are aligned with the ISO standards that we follow. So yeah, it's not automatic, but it's like Michael said, it's you're a big part of the way there by doing your footprints through a verified platform. Anything to add, Kieran?
No, I think that's it. I think if you just think of the tool itself has been verified, but what we then need to check is the things that you're providing to the tool, so the raw data, and then obviously that the tool is being used correctly. So it's a small amount of work compared to, I guess, a normal PCF verification.
All right. Great stuff. Lots of good questions coming in. So we're going to keep this rolling. This one says, when you talk about product labeling, are you talking about the Carbon Trust label and label certification could be kind of interchangeable terms here, but in today's market, there are already several other labels that may even overlap in requirements. How is labeling and specificity in the products uploaded into Lattice dealt with? And so this may be a combination answer, but HowGood team, Crystal and Liz, anything to kind of weigh in on here?
Yeah, first of all, hi, Pedro. Victoria's on here as well. Great question. There are a handful of sustainability claims and metrics that you can take to your business to business conversations, or even a step further to B2C conversations. That's what we talk about when we talk about labeling, is the ability to essentially put the data that's behind your PCF in a consumer facing fashion that makes it either more attractive, or essentially moving the quantitative into more of a qualitative, taking the data of what's happening behind the scenes with your product, including the impact and some of the amazing work that your team is doing, and then using that for consumer facing and business decision making, driving more demand. Essentially, when we talk about like a competitive advantage, climate labeling is a really good way to essentially take that to market. Liz, do you have anything to add on that?
No, you nailed it.
All right. And I got one for the Carbon Trust team. Once you have the product carbon footprint verified, can you then make a claim on pack? Is it as simple as that? Or maybe Carbon Trust team, you can explain that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this kind of relates to the different claims that I was alluding to earlier. So essentially, all of our product carbon footprint labels are linked to a specific claim. So either commitment to reductions or achieve reductions. There's different claims that you can pursue. As long as you meet the requirements for those claims, then you would be able to use the labels on your products on pack. And I think just touching on the comment on, there's lots of different labels. This is definitely, it's definitely true. There are lots of labels out there. I think with evolving legislation around the world and evolving kind of guidelines on what can and can't be said, in the UK, in the EU, there's legislation coming through. There's green claims directives coming through. In the US, the Federal Trade Commission is also providing guidance and guidelines on making claims about products and on labeling of products. And so I think at the moment, we probably have more labels than what may be kind of available to the sector once all of these guidelines are kind of published and through the door, in the sense that we're kind of expecting to see a move towards, certified third-party marks to make these claims, and to avoid essentially the risk and also the potential kind of accusations of greenwash, for example, which we've definitely seen over the last couple of years become a bit more rampant, I think.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tiffany. I love this one. How important is having precise sourcing location of ingredients for calculating carbon footprint? And then it adds, how much are results different if you only provide country location versus GSP coordinates? Crystal, maybe weigh in on that. Liz, if you want to add anything on top.
Yeah, I'll take the first part, which is, and to Michael's point, an excellent question. Having precise sourcing locations is fantastic if you have a great relationship with your suppliers and can gather that information. We think that it really leans into that statement of shared responsibility and shared opportunity. However, it's not required. When we built our database and when we go to market with the product offerings that we do, we understand that having those relationships and having access to primary data might not be something you're able to do out of the box or out of the gate. So we definitely have built a system still in alignment with the GHG protocol, still certified by ISO, that basically provides you some gap fillers in order to fill in those gaps on missing information like location, so that you can still build a confident baseline, and then we can work together to understand how to collect that more granular data to start to set some more strategic reduction goals ultimately. But maybe from a technical perspective, Liz.
Where you have those relationships, that data is really important, and it can actually change your product carbon footprint quite a bit depending on where you are sourcing that data. So just want to emphasize that putting that data in anywhere that you have it does make a very big difference, and it really helps you know where that you should take the next action.
All right. Thanks, Liz and Crystal. All right, we're going to wrap things up now. Tiff, I want to give you a chance to say any final remarks.
I think, the food system as a whole gets a lot of stick for having quite high emissions in kind of global emissions terms, but we have also made huge progress over the last 20 years. And I think the industry is moving in a really good direction, and that we've seen, really ambitious commitments from large players around the world, not just, in the US and in the EU. And so I think, don't be afraid to talk about the things that you're doing, and use assurance as a means to help you to communicate those things in a credible way, so that you can actually get the recognition that is deserved for the great programs that you have in place to reduce your emissions.
Awesome. Very well said. Thank you, Tiffany. And thank you, everybody, for joining on the panel side, listening in for the last hour. Please contact HowGood via our website. Any questions, or you just want to get the discussion going, you're interested in joining this cohort of pilot participants that we're launching in 2025 and beyond, building product carbon footprints, getting assurance quickly and easily, all those things. Please reach out, and you've got the HowGood website. You've got Michael at howgood.com, Crystal at howgood.com. Many ways to reach us. Looking forward to talking to everybody. Thank you for joining. Have a great day.